our focus is to break the linear experience of using AI, in the browser, because linear experience is because all conversational AI services are kind of, question, answer, question, answer. Now, this is not entirely how we even think in our heads, or browsing, it's not linear experience, right? So, of course, we started with some ideas, like I mentioned, but I think we go to another level, rethinking browsing experience, or what is the mental model of browsing experience, and when AI can, trigger whether a new flow or really make it interesting. What like interesting of how you do things today on the web.
Joanna Chaika, welcome to the VoiceBot podcast.
Hello.
I'm very excited to have you here today. We're going to talk about, I guess, the past, present, and future of browsing and how generative AI may have changed a few things. But why don't we talk a little bit about you to get started? Because I think your background is as a designer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually designer and animator. In my background, I did a lot of stuff in this area, and then quite naturally, I turned into product manager and increasing my role and responsibilities, especially at Opera.
Absolutely. So you're an animator, but you probably were animating before generative AI would do that for you.
Well, definitely my favorite comparison is actually, when everyone was animating in 2D style, and then 3D animation came in. And I
Yes.
am completely sure 2D animators, a lot of them were probably freaked out, like, oh my God, now 3D animation will replace everything. It didn't replace, right? Like, we enjoy still movies in 2D animation style and 3D, and you can say lovely stories regardless the technique, right? So I think this is how I also perceive AI myself. Like, it's amazing tool. We can really achieve great stuff. So whether I'm speaking now as a designer or animator or product director, it's just something I'm looking forward, to increase what we can do, as humans, as artists, as whoever.
It is kind of amazing, though, what you can do with the systems. And I was just spending some time with the new Midjourney Alpha solution, which is not officially out, but I had some access to it. And like I've been using these for, I guess at this point, over a year and a half now. And the improvement is pretty extraordinary. I think we were pretty impressed. I was impressed, let's say 18 months ago, at what the text to image generators could do. I'm much more impressed now because the amount of advances that they've made over the last 12 months really has really been extraordinary.
I mean, it's just amazing, right? It's just 1 year when, ChatGPT kind of, let's say, reversed our reality a little bit, right? Then, generative AI, whether, conversational one, when you just chat, or you can really generate things with the AI. I mean, it's so fresh. It's crazy. It's crazily fast. It's not stabilized in any way, I think. Like, it's actually amazing to see that, the company that, or other companies that were kind of, fast and first, they really iterate on that, surprising us with, another and another upgrade. um but I think, like, sometimes it's still at the demo stage, like, I cannot really imagine someone is standing now and saying this is it. Like, it's not this is it. I think we're so, at the beginning still, whether it's, image generation or anything else with this area.
I think that's really interesting. You're a product manager. This is a great question for you. Are we in an era of the perpetual beta?
Um, I think this is probably what I meant. Like, speaking, like, even going back to my background, and then, that today I'm just leading the Opera browser, the product is like, I just can't stop asking myself every day, what else is there I don't see today, but I will see, in my hack tomorrow. So I can really do this shift in user interface and the experience in the browser. I mean, let's go back again to something that happened even longer than time ago than 3D animation in cinemas. Is that graphical user interface? That was a big paradigm shift, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like suddenly, we can use computers in a completely different way. Like someone just imagined that, and this is amazing. So for me, it's like Joanna, if you want to see something around the corner, just go there and try and explore. And I think this is, I would expect that the next year, for both companies, for companies that know how to, handle technicalities of AI, because it's not easy. I think this is something that I think we will see, great stuff from Opera and from other companies that are bold enough to say it's not enough. We need to keep exploring. So I would say yes.
Yeah. It, just ship, right? Just ship product. You
Yes.
have to release it. And it's really been very interesting seeing, companies like Google struggle with this because and part of it's because there's very high expectations and sense of responsibility that people have around Google, both internally and externally, about what should be out there, which is interesting because they were the perpetual beta company. I can't remember, like, Gmail was in beta for like many years, like after like it was, there were hundreds of millions of people using it. And they've struggled with that a little bit versus ChatGPT or like Opera. And I think Opera is in particular very interesting because Opera's been around for a long time and yet has embraced this just ship perpetual beta type of model, and maybe taking a little bit of a risk at with the trade-off being sort of a lot more interesting user experience. So let's talk about, you can tell me where we should start, but like Opera One came out several months ago. And I think Opera One was probably in the works before ChatGPT hit, hit the world just a little over a year ago now. What was the idea behind Opera One? Or was it ChatGPT and like, we have to rethink the browsing experience? I think you probably are always rethinking the browsing experience, but like, tell me about how that all came together, like even before you got to ARIA.
I like your investigation style of question. And it's because it's really interesting is that, Opera is alternative browser, right? And you touched that a little bit, but it's really truly kind of original browser still standing, from the very beginning of the web, right? And yes, we question browsing experience a lot of time. We brought a lot of innovation into the browser market. So this is our DNA. And now AI came as a technology on a stage. Well, AI was there, right? But now it's amazing because we can use it on a bigger scale as a user experience in apps, right? In products. So of course we jumped on that. But yes, we constantly, try to understand and ship something that we truly, think that okay, this is next step for browsing experience. Opera One. So I think that it's fairly to say that we're cooking something all the time, right? Like we have our internal, let's say, labs. We experiment, we prototype. Now, when ChatGPT, kind of um, came on the stage very vividly, we knew that, okay, we're going to integrate ChatGPT into our browser. Straightforward. We were very fast. We explored with AI prompts when you're browsing. But of course, we were cooking, something in the background, and we basically, we connect dots, right? So Opera One is a very important milestone for our Opera browser, for the product, because we re-engineered the interface actually. We added, like a modular design, which combined with the multi-threaded compositor really makes the interface open to be, let's say, supported by AI in many ways, right? So of course we started from integration of ChatGPT, we saw a high demand, we saw happy users, and then we were like, we're jumping straight forward to build our own engine or our own AI engine. And then on top of that, we bring our own AI called ARIA into our product, which is, well, first of all, we thought, okay, let's address demand. So it was ChatGPT-like experience in sidebar, but of course it's our own AI ARIA. But it was not enough still, because we believe that AI is something you want your browser to live in with, or be, boosted by. So we also introduced we two another integrations in June when we were releasing Opera One and Aria, because so when you're browsing, you use command slash, and you ask questions straightforward. So you don't really have this, hassle between jumping between your browsing experience to tap, to ask question, to go back and forth. Actually using ARIA in sidebar panel, which you can pin, also makes it much more smoother. Like it makes it smoother. The other thing that we did, we have a feature called browser highlighter. It's a tooltip. So whenever you're highlighting something on the web, you have a couple of options, and one of them is just to ask or work or explain or explore with ARIA. So those little things at the beginning, this is what we started with in June. And these little things was our approach to really integrate AI into your browsing flow, which exists today. Now, the question is, of course, what is the browsing flow with AI in future? And we keep exploring.
Okay. So you said a lot there. So let me go back to October 2023. October 2022. Sorry. So a little over a year ago, before ChatGPT came out. Was Opera One an idea at that point? Was it already an existing project that you were sort of rethinking the UI? And there was a number of different things around the sidebar and the way that you do tab management and things like that that came out, I think, with Opera One. Was this already an idea, and then you added generative AI to it, or did it come after ChatGPT?
I think that it's what I mentioned before. Is I can tell you that, for example, today we're cooking things that we will release, at the end of the year. So we never stop trying, designing, prototyping. Opera One was actually, it's a beautiful story, because Opera One was kind of special, let's say, narrative, as we were hitting Opera 100 this year. So, it's like for us as Opera, it was a couple of things going on at the same time. So last year, we were definitely in the middle of exploration, like we always are, like with a lot of features that we want to bring next month. And definitely, once there was an AI, still, like you said, last year, then it was just a matter of how fast we can, cooperate with the companies like OpenAI or Google.
So, but before November 30th of 2022, you weren't actually thinking about some sort of AI first implementation in the browser. You had other things, a lot of other recipes and ingredients cooking, but you hadn't really thought about doing something like the interactive solution that we have today.
It really depends on what we are talking about, because
Okay.
today the AI, as we're actually everyone is talking, is those LLMs like OpenAI or Google, or like if we're talking about this, then of course the cooperation and collaboration, whether with OpenAI or Google, came later. But like AI is something that is helping our ideas, or I believe every company, AI is helping really boosting these ideas, right? Because if you think about AI as a, let's say down to earth a little bit. So if you think about AI as a kind of optimization tool, than or something that it's making, things faster. um, there's a lot of beautiful features that we would like to do, but they need this technology to be possible
Right.
to be released. So in a way, like, of course we had ideas, but AI is a technology that, what I mentioned before, it's um, to use it on a bigger scale. It was actually impossible only this year. But AI in the form of different libraries, it's not something that never existed before October 2022. Like, we have a lot of things, even
Sure.
in gaming industry, right, that they're using different kind of models. Um, but fairly speaking, that was amazing, to see that some of our ideas, whether October 2022 or earlier or later, they are now kind of having this fire behind.
Well, so and so just to like play this out so people get a sense of the history. So November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT comes out. Like, how long after that were you using it? Were other people in your organization using it? And when did you decide, oh wait, we need to put this in the browser right away?
Uh, I think immediately.
Like
Like,
within a couple of weeks, like in December of last year, you were like, yes, this is going to be the future of the Opera browser.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're browser nerds, we're technology nerds. We just love it. It's like, we probably sometimes don't sleep and chat with each other, on the new technology, new product, or whatever. So I would say straightforward.
And when did the idea for ARIA like come up? So is that like right away that you were going to have your own, or is that something that like didn't come about until you sort of formed it in like January, February timeframe?
Um, that was, like, we always have Opera way. Like, we always have our own way to address this or that feature, which exists in other browser later or earlier. Like, it's our DNA, as I mentioned. And I think with AI, it was pretty clear from the beginning that, this is technology. This is what other companies are doing now. We are a browser company. We have our own way of working on the browser experience. So that was kind of clear that we need to have our own thing. But it was very interesting because if you are a company and you want to do anything with AI, you need to have um, technical capacity, ability, understanding, and user experience. And beyond that, what is really important, as well, is that if you operate on a big scale, like we have, tens of millions of users, we have to know how to explore, how to explore the future. And as you said before, exploring is also shipping very fast, because we need to ship, we need to experiment, we need to get user feedback. So we were fast, because I think it was maybe March that we,
Yeah.
released integrated chat GPT with all AI prompts. That was amazing. That was such a great to get feedback from users, which, like, a lot of them were really kind of into AI already. So their feedback was one thing. Another thing was feedback from people who are kind of still like, oh my God, AI. That was amazing, and at the same time, once we were busy shipping this, of course, we started working on our own AI engine, and which we knew that will end up with something special for us, our own AI.
Well, tell me maybe for those two different groups, some of the things you learned. So you had your power users who already knew about AI or were really into technology, and they were probably telling you one set of things. And then there's these other people who are new to AI or different. Like, how do you segment that? You're a designer, you're a product manager. Like, how do you think about those different types of users? Because I was just sitting in on a like a very advanced mid-journey group, and like I don't spend as much time on that in that space, but like those are the people that are like they love Discord, they love the way people like the current scenario, and they like the new product too, which is the web app. Uh, but I think it's really interesting because like the people who don't use Midjourney as much, like who are like new in part because they don't like Discord or something like that. Like where are they getting that information? Because that's like the big expansion opportunity for them. So like, so I think I see this across the board. We've got the newbies and we've got the hardcore people. So in March, April, May, whenever it was you were doing your initial alpha testing, what were you hearing back from the different groups, and was it similar or different?
Um, my answer might a little bit disappoint you, because it's actually, regardless whether it's AI or not, we have always things like this, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is what I work with. I work with the feedback from users, which, and believe me, some of them are so into setting up their browser that they are specifically, you know, um, change settings, go to more private, using VPN, right? Or do this or do that. And we have people who are happily browsing, with tabs only. We have people who are crazily intensely using messengers in sidebar, and we have people on a different, on a different part of the axis. So it's, I believe, for every product theme, it's reality, and it's the same with AI. It's just like, connecting dots, understand which group is using this or that feature this or that way. So with AI, we know that we have people who are, um, I mean, we know that we attract people who are very into AI because, they're probably using it every day. A lot of people who are using AI every day are very much also into productivity, right? And we have people who are giving us feedback through, a lot of ways in our product that slightly suggest that they are, let's say, inspired. But the feedback is not entirely about AI, but about the experience with AI. So I think it's quite easy to kind of, distinguish the groups, whether the feedback is on what you can create and do with AI and how you interact with that. But it's regardless AI, it's a standard product team work. Understand feedback.
So what? So before you, I think you did the official announcement in June, where you rolled it. I mean, you did an announcement, like a pre-announcement that it's coming in March or April, and then like rolled out a couple months later to people. So what did you learn in that period? What was something that maybe surprised you or changed because of this feedback from users, or at least what you saw from a behavior standpoint, the way they were using the technology?
Um, so definitely, our definitely our AI engine team uh, was uh, was having a great path, to optimize the how the engine works. I just want to mention as well that, um, and it's actually touching features above for users. It's surfacing as features. So we're really independent here because our AI engine is modular, and it means that we can actually pick which LLMs we work with. That's why we can work with OpenAI and Google at the same time, as an example. But why I'm saying this, it's because we can also decide what kind of models we use to provide this or that AI feature. That's why we're very flexible. It's really fast. Like, the world, AI world, is changing so fast. So our engine had to be built that way as well. Now, so in user experience of ARIA, you might have, probably you got the answer for your question formulated by this model, like maybe OpenAI. But when you're exploring something, you get pretty nice, really nice, let's say, exploration search suggestions from Google, specifically API. So it gives us, a lot of flexibility to keep exploring. um, and what we've learned was, especially from the very first integration of ChatGPT and AI prompts, is what I mentioned, is that definitely we see people are interested. We saw a lot of people either in our user base or coming to Opera, just to explore how to, how it is to browse and having, services integrated a little bit differently than in other browsers. But on a kind of a, let's say, playful side of user feedback, it was actually interesting to see what kind of AI prompts people are using. And honestly, that was such a lovely thing, to see that AI prompts about exploring, explaining were actually as much like useful as, for example, rephrase something as Yoda or writing a poem. Because what we actually did at the very beginning, we were, all directions. So either I would say humorous, creative, or classically, functional, like explore or explain. So I think that was just that was a super experience that triggered a lot of ideas that we are regularly shipping now and in future.
Is that the way you think about it? Like explore versus explain from a use case standpoint?
I would like, I wouldn't really put now this kind of border between two, really. That was just, our first attempt in the spring. I would actually say that what we are like our focus is to break the linear experience of using AI, in the browser, because linear experience is because all conversational AI services are kind of, question answer, question answer. Now, this is not entirely how we even think in our heads, or browsing, it's not linear experience, right? So, of course, we started with some ideas, like I mentioned, but I think we go to another level, rethinking browsing experience, or what is the mental model of browsing experience, and when AI can, trigger whether new flow or really make it interesting. What's like interesting of how you do things today on the web. So I believe that it's not that we want to repeat ourselves, but in a new version, it's actually very much okay how to break with what people know, with all that chat-like experience with AI, and propose something different.
Okay, well let's do that. So the we probably should just take a step back because we've mentioned ARIA a couple times, but why don't you tell people what ARIA is, how it sort of leads to this new mental model for browsing?
Um, so um, let's start from maybe very simple thing, like you have your life, you have a lot of topics in your life, you have a lot of context switching, right? And very often the browser reflects that, right? And you know as in life, sometimes you just need help, sometimes you need support. There's a lot of apps already that are supporting our life very much, and browser is one of them. It's just AI now in the browser is probably making some your processes or your task or your projects, I would say, smoother and easier. So of course we started with something familiar at that time at the beginning of the year. Like I mentioned, like people were crazy about chatting with AI, so we were like, yeah, this is Arya, chat like with any other service. But that was just the beginning, and we're ready to move forward. So the thing is that when you try to deal with your life, so saying your tabs, for example, we know there's a lot of users with a lot of tabs, which we kind of addressed as well this year by with Opera One releasing tab islands. So tab islands, it's, I would say, sophisticated way of how your tabs are organized, but not automatically, more by context, more by how you browse. So if you start a new topic, the way you browse, the tab islands are just created for you. You don't have to do anything. You just browse it like you always do. And then after some times, you have those contexts in your browser. and maybe you want to do something with it, right? Maybe browser can understand your intent and not even organize, but try to combine a topic into one research, or help you, compare products which to buy, or maybe help you just make decision, which is very difficult, making decisions in our life. So I think there's a lot of exploration on our side, which starts from your life, going through tabs and your browser, the way you browse, and AI, which is LLM based, understands your language, understands a lot of things that you can just type to it. This might be, at the beginning of how we will start changing the browser interface.
Mhm.
Um,
So just like ask a question here, just like in terms of browser and the way you think about this. One of the ways people would organize is they would have multiple windows, and each window would have multiple tabs in it. Is the idea behind tab islands is to try to get people to use one window or fewer windows, uh, because you're automatically organizing it for them? And if that's true, is it like more efficient to run it in just one window versus multiple windows? Like, what's the rationale behind that?
um, so I would say a little bit like, um, as a browser, which is almost 30 years in the market, which is from the beginning, there is no one pattern how you browse, and that's lovely. Everyone is different, and like, I don't want to say one thing is right. I would never say that, but it's worth to remember that Oprah invented tabs. So it's amazing story that throughout almost the 30 years, we started from introducing tabs, but we were always very happy to rethink them. And we rethink them a couple of times in our history. Now, recent update is actually interesting milestone, not only because of top islands, but also, as I mentioned, we re-engineered the interface. So the browser interface technically can really behave like like you just manage your life in a way, like you manage real objects, right? So the browser can really fit when you're browsing. Um, you know Keeping the context, so you don't really have to think to organize things when you browse, and that was our very big objective. But as I said, like, everyone is different. This is beautiful, and we want to propose the interface that kind of adapt to you. So I can tell you there's a lot of people using a couple of windows and top islands altogether, and there are
Yes.
people who are using workspaces and top islands within that altogether. I think this flexibility, I think this kind of a freedom how you interact with our interface is probably what we want to achieve.
And when we talk about tab islands, just like, so most browsing experiences within a window, tab, 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 and it's basically this linear experience. But because we live in a world of context switching, there'll be two things on one topic, one other thing, three things on another topic, go back to the first topic, right? Go back to the third topic, and then they're all. Does the browser automatically just say, "Oh, these are like things," even though from a linear standpoint they were out of order? It does it resort them?
So let me maybe start what are top islands. So of course, when you're starting like a topic, you go, I don't know, maybe to Google, you open a couple of results. This is one top island. This is one of your action. If you want to do something with it later, you can collapse it easily. It doesn't really take a space then. You can expand it anytime you want to continue. Or maybe you're planning a trip and you go to booking.com, you open a couple of hotels, but you cannot really decide it now, or you want to show to someone else, but you have to work. So you want to collapse this island and go to another topic. And you can easily go back. So I think that eventually your tab strip is either a timeline, what you were doing today or maybe this week, but treating tabs as objects that you can easily group, like drag and drop,
Yeah.
or our group like into tab islands, or you can move it actually however you want. I think this kind of, as I mentioned, this kind of flexibility is something that we wanted to achieve, which is very similar to mobile interfaces, isn't it? Like mobile is so touchable, right? Like you really feel that, like whenever app you're downloading on mobile, you already know what to do because these are gestures, right? So
Yeah.
you expect a lot of things to happen. And I think that despite Opera browser that we're talking about is on desktop, we definitely aiming to give you this kind of freedom to interact with the interface.
Absolutely. So, like, how do you think about desktop versus mobile when it comes in, like, sort of coming back to like reframing the browsing experience?
Sorry, can you repeat?
How do
Uh,
you think about desktop versus mobile browsing experience? So, like,
Versus mobile.
reframing the browsing experience. These are two very different experiences, desktop and mobile. So, in your new framework for browsing, like, how do you think about them differently?
Um, well, I think it's I think it's like you take your mobile is everywhere with you. Mobile is so contextual. Mobile is so like for the moment you're in, right? But try to do some other complex stuff on mobile, and it might be not so convenient. So sometimes the answer for such questions is very simple. Like we have a big screen, which is convenient, and you're using it in a slightly different moment. And you have mobile, which is something I believe people are not just living any second of our life anywhere. So I think that it's very much as a product, maybe team, as a product director, I think I try to take some pieces from both, which I like, which are maybe building the experience super. And I try to not be limited in my thinking. So, okay, this is desktop, so desktop should behave like this. Nothing that it's for me. Like I like so many things in mobile apps that I'm just like, you know, trying to push boundaries and place it in desktop. But of course, doing things on desktop, in a browser, um, and even looking at segments, what people are using browser for. We have students, right? We have people who are working in the browser. We have people who are, I don't know, watching Netflix at night only. We know that people might be segmented that way, but nevertheless, taking the best practices from different platforms, just to make your own product, let's say, more attractive, or yeah, more attractive is just a good way to evolve your product.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so when we think about ARIA, it's and I do like I really like this idea of the sidebar like tools, which ARIA just sort of pops out. Edge browser does this as well. There's another place that people might see it, and it's uh, this idea of like being able to maintain context, but like sometimes like, but also be flexible, so that like, oh, I just need to check my WhatsApp messages, or I need to like pull up ChatGPT or ARIA or something like that. Uh, so you mentioned that you use multiple models right now, and you mentioned both OpenAI and Google, and I think you launched with OpenAI and you added Google later, if I remember correctly. But you said, specifically this idea that, oh, if you're like asking to rephrase something or write a new email, maybe it dynamically, I think this is one of the questions, it selects the OpenAI browser or model versus a search, it might select the Google browser. Tell me how that works. So you have like an orchestration engine or supervisor of some sort, which then arbitrates the decision based on what you're asking, which model would be appropriate to use, and is that in real time?
So we started with OpenAI, but definitely from scratch, as I mentioned. Our engine was really modular, so it's not even only OpenAI or Google. There are different models, and and it's the amazing machine in a way. that has to be flexible to give us the speed and give us the space to explore and build another feature. For now, whenever you're chatting with ARIA, we specifically for now use OpenAI LLM model. Recently, we released the ARIA update with search suggestion that we did with Google. But I want to mention that it's like we're still exploring, and very much our partners, I would say, we collaborate with them, which is great. And it's like these are moving pieces. Like, we try to get feedback, we try to see the reaction. We are very transparent. We whatever we build now, we're trying to be opt-in, or we try to be very transparent how to
Sure.
what is the feature, what is behind the feature. But nothing, like as I mentioned, nothing in AI world today is stabilized, right? So I believe as we chatted before, the engine we built is just helping us to adjust decisions, adjust models based on what we want to achieve and what kind of
Right.
features we want to surface.
And when you say engine, what you're talking about, I think, is the orchestration between the models, because you're not building your own foundation model, right? I think you're using other people's foundation models. And so the engine then is deciding how to work with either one model or multiple models given a user interaction. Is that correct?
This is actually a very important question because if you're a browser with 10 millions of users and a lot of them are interesting to use AI, that's a huge responsibility. We're also European company under very strict privacy laws. So it's like if you want to bring AI to users, you have to know what you're doing. Now, AI engine, it means that LLM model is just not enough. It's not something you can, dock to the product and suddenly they can use AI. It's LLM model. So you have to understand what you want to achieve. You want to bring safe, secure AI, let's say, service or integration maybe. And that means that we have to handle, how ARIA behaves, what it's what is the privacy of ARIA, what is the security of ARIA. It's worth to mention that even before ChatGPT, I think when we released ARIA first time, we let ARIA could bring you live results from the web. So there's a lot, like once you decide what is your product about, and now we're talking about AI, you understand that you need your own engine with, let's say, different modules and maybe, using your word, different orchestration around kind of a core thing, which is LLM. But the core thing we built in a modular way, so we can adjust, which model to use for what. But I think it's actually something that I think you're touching also something, kind of a question, what we can expect next year, like how many other companies will bring AI to their offer, because it's not that obvious how to bring AI features or AI services if we're talking about big scale.
Absolutely. So just to build on that, you built your own engine. So I assume that engine has things like custom system prompts, which are specific to the Opera browsing experience, and maybe your own guardrails. Is that are those good examples?
Well, a lot of things in that kind of engine is based on prompts, right? So, for example, if we introduce recently features like reuse, rephrase, compose, right? When you can compose, if you write something, you can compose social posts or email or presentation scenario, right? So everything is kind of based on AI prompts, and definitely this is something that we're capable of. And I mean, this is the part of creating an engine, right? It's actually amazing because um, this is what I meant when I said that if you want to bring AI to the user base on a big scale like Opera, you have to acknowledge that LLM is LLM, and it means that the prompt you set up one day, they have to be reviewed and reiterated. So that's why it's so experimental all the time, never ending. But yeah, like AI prompts, it's definitely a huge part of how you try to handle, user intent when using ARIA to get something from LLM.
What have you learned about safety? You mentioned that a couple of times. So, are you able to handle the safety issues? And we can talk about security together with this or separately if you prefer. Are you able to handle that mostly with adding a system prompt to the interaction, or do you need to have a supervisor, like as a guardrail, to do a subsequent review before returning the response?
If I understand your question correctly, we spent a lot of time on making sure that ARIA will recognize questions that it shouldn't be answered, to be specific, right? So we don't want people to use ARIA to create things that can be harmful. Also, as I mentioned, like let's say like all the user experience around ARIA or AI, like it's the other way. We have very strict policy. We have restrictions, and it's very clear that how ARIA operates for every user. But AI, it's tricky, and I believe that this is our role. Like AI is technology, and our role is to translate it to
Right.
user experience and feature. Right. So there's a lot of things to
But
work on.
like just to like try to like go down to this lower level so people understand how it works. Are you handling this all right now through a system prompt that's basically saying don't cover these types of things, is like appended to the user prompt? Or are you also doing something where you're actually evaluating the response before it gets printed to the screen?
I'm not sure if I can answer this question. Like, I think we're going into details, but it's more like um, as we talk, like our AI engine is let's say this LLM model, this core, uh, surrounded by models that try to understand your intent, and I think it's. It doesn't matter in which level. It means that if your prompt is detected in a way that it's not appropriate, then it
Yes.
doesn't matter which level will reject it, right? But I think it's worth to mention that this is why we're saying we build our own AI engine,
Mhm.
and this is why we're saying this is ARIA, Opera's, AI integrated in the browser, because one thing it's how LLM model that you're using, whatever the company you're collaborating with, it's one thing, but then you're responsible for your product, right? So yeah.
Interesting. So I have my Opera browser open right here, and I have in the sidebar, I've got ARIA as like at the top of my little tool section there on the left, and then next is Chat GPT. So those are right next to each other. Some people might say, "Hey, listen, they're the same thing." Like so, maybe just as like a product manager, like why are they both there? Maybe it's just choice, but like I'm interested in your perspective on that. And then like, what determines whether someone chooses one or the other?
Um, I think there's a big difference, but let me start from the other side. We love our users, and we know there is a demand for this or that service, and we rather see, AI as a, let's say, a cool way how to evolve browsers, right? But the difference is significant because all our, let's say, other integrations like command line, like browser highlighter, or the other features we're planning soon, they are directing users to ARIA. So ARIA is kind of a native AI built in our own integration. So when you're browsing, and you will now use those two, but later more, when you're browsing and you're doing those things, when you use ARIA, it will be ARIA.
Does Aria maintain session history for me? So, for example, like this is sort of now that you're mentioning that. So, ChatGPT is disconnected from everything else in my life, right? And so it's like it's just this one discrete service that
Mm-hmm.
then I can like copy and paste, and I can use other places. But and they're working on like doing more integration with it, that type of
Yeah.
thing. But it's really interesting with Aria, like you're seeing my browsing history, for example, or you could,
No.
depending on what this you can't. Okay, so that, but let me just say, like, this is
Mhm.
maybe you've talked about this, and maybe there's reasons why you don't do it, but like, this would be really interesting to me. So if I'm asking a question, let's say I'm asking a question again, but I have browsing history related to this from 6 weeks ago, and this happens to me all the time. Like I'm trying to recall something that I read 3 months
Mhm.
ago or 6 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or something like that, but I don't have the tab open anymore. And the way search engines work, which is just terrible, is it's hard to find things like again very often. Um, but if it was looking at my history, it would actually be able to say, "Oh, you had done this as well," or to organize that into the response is one of the links. Is this
Mhm.
something you've talked about? It sounds like you won't do that, but why? Because it would be great.
So Arya doesn't have access to anything apart from the things that you put in the chat today. Um, Browsing history is something very personal, um, and um, and I think that this kind of innovation needs a little bit more time. So people are kind of ready to this feature, then to this feature, then to that feature. So we're very clear today what ARIA is actually, what ARIA can access. So today, as I mentioned, it's limited to chat. Um, but as a browser, we actually gives a lot of ways how you can easily to come back something. Doesn't necessarily need AI, but of course I can imagine that would be beautiful. Hey Arya, like
Yeah, I mean, I
2
wanna
months
flatten
ago
my
I was in the.
experience, right? I just wanna, like, say, "Hey, listen," like, I don't have to think anymore. I don't have to think, like, what month it was or where I was, like, doing this or, like, what the publication was or anything like that. I just like, "Hey, Aria, I was looking at this sometime in the last 3 months. Could you pull it back up for me?"
Well, it's another thing, like how you browse. Like as I mentioned, like we have a lot of features that we know our users um, let's say use, because it's like, for example, highlighter, right? Like you highlight stuff, you try to remember, you try to save
Yeah.
it. Like you can actually save things from Aria to our pinboards feature. Or actually, this is also interesting because it's not only about the history of browsing, but you have your own history with AI, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why our new refiner tool have this highlighter, because we know that people can remember things better if they highlight something
Wait, so can I
um,
can I highlight, like, in an ARIA
with the
response?
color, like with the marker.
Yeah, but like, with an ARIA response, can I highlight that as well as opposed
Yes, yes, exactly. So,
Oh.
imagine that you are so into a topic with Arya, right? So you explore something, or you try to work on, let's say, podcast plan, right, or podcast plan for next year. And there's a lot of interesting things in a couple of messages, and you can highlight them with color. To remember, or when you go back to this chat, you can easily recognize the things that you're still interested in to use for your plans. And then when you highlight, you can also highlight a couple of things and write much simpler prompt, like, okay, so combine it to one deck for me. Or you can simply, if you work on I don't know, like a text with Arya, you can highlight something to rephrase it. And it's actually interesting that we're touching it now, because this is something what I mentioned, that we want to break this linear experience.
Yes.
So instead of asking again AI, hey, can you do it again, but with this and that, and changing this and that. You just highlight something, and you have, at least 2 3 ways how to reiterate the answer right there. um,
When
so
you
that's why
highlight too, when I highlight something, does it like create some sort of meta tag, or some sort of tag that then I can search against in the future, like automatically in the background?
uh, this is not yet something we have.
Okay, this is something you should do, because like everyone's just like so enamored with all the conversations and threads that they have with their AI chat assistant of choice. Uh, but now everybody has a lot of those, and so then the question is like, how do you find something? So now we need search of the conversations, not just search for new information.
I would say that the option what I mentioned, that you can actually save ARIA answer to pinboards,
Yeah,
which is kind of, visually, it's visual way how you can make notes, right?
that's
I think
fine.
it's kind of a thing you're looking for as well. Because that's actually again this not linear thinking, that instead of, you have this conversation in a sidebar with Arya, and it will be like a stream of information, your question answer. But once you have this, a habit, or once you know that whatever interesting, you just click and it's in pinboards. Then you go to pinboards and you have it, as a visual board actually of your notes,
I think that's
which you can
amazing.
edit.
I just don't care for that. I don't see what that does is that then requires the next time for me to go to the pin board, like scroll, search, whatever. The beauty of conversational interfaces is it flattens everything. Everything's just a node, and you have a direct
Mhm.
link to every node from every node, right? As opposed to the hierarchical models that all the UI, all the stuff you've designed over the years, click here, this, that, right? There's a procedure that you have to follow in order to get what you want. And so I, there's a role, there's room for that. Like I think pin boards are great. I like folders, like I use folders, right? That's a hierarchical
Mhm.
system. But this idea that we could flatten it all so that anywhere from anywhere you can get anything at any time directly, as opposed to following some procedure. And so that's, I'm just saying this like, I'm giving you feedback as a user of the Opera browser that this is something that I would like. And I would also give you permission to use my browsing history to provide that other service. Now, that might not be something you decide to ever do for whatever reason as an organization.
Mhm.
But if you did do that, you would have me as a user, and someone will do that, even if it's not you. And I don't know that it'll get them new users, but it'll make a subset of their existing users happier.
So I think we're kind of closing this beautiful circle of, everyone is different, and I totally agree with you. On the other hand, I have a lot of users with the feedback: make it visual, make it
Oh, sure.
movable.
Yeah.
That's why we have pinboards. But yes, I think that this is something which AI can really help. And this is something probably that we see in future in our command line to ARIA, is that you don't have to kind of think and decide. You just go into one place and you
Yes.
type what you need.
Yeah.
Where you can also add your emotions. Like if you're really angry because you cannot find something in the browser, you can really express it because LLM would understand that, right? So that's a kind of a addition to it. But it's definitely the beauty, as what you said, is like flattening just to one line when you can just ask for anything, right?
Yeah. And like I'm a little biased here because I've only basically thought about assistants for a decade, right? And so, it's all been AI based. And so like I understand all the different models, and I understand that I would like pin boards sometimes too. But like that's pin boards and organization structures are generally more available than like the flatten approach. But I just want to close because we're coming to the end of our time here. I want to talk to you about two things: SEO and the web experience. So generative AI, the tools that are coming in here, and like how generative AI is like uh, delivering links to websites, how it is representing websites potentially with summaries and the sidebar and all these other types of things with the browser and stuff like that. what is your perspective on how the browsing experience is going to change beyond the like creation stuff that we've been doing in terms of the chat, but like the browsing experience? And I want it from like a demand and supply side. So like, how's the user experience going to be different because AI is doing something either to find places or to give you summaries and things like that? And then on the supply side, how are marketers going to need to think about building their websites differently to basically take all advantage of all the things that services like ARIA provide?
Um, so definitely, let's say like user experience and AI, that is just it's just open. Like it's really 1 year, and I think like we're super excited that we're as Opera we're moving so fast of exploring and shipping. That is just um, that is just amazing that we can now explore new way of doing interfaces. And I think again I will go back to my background, which is design and animation, because on one hand I am super excited that let's say physically the interface can work a little bit different, but let's remember that you're also browsing with the content. So once a user like you're very happy to give me like to give to AI the access to your browsing history, but once we connect all the elements, the context, the content, the parts of the browser, it can be really powerful. But the most exciting things is that we have to imagine, right? Like we cannot really ask AI. We have to do as a humans. Like we know users. We are here as Opera like 30 years. We started from introducing tabs to the world. We reinvented that a couple of times on that way, and I think chat linear experience with AI, that was really just the beginning. That helped us, to build the engine, and we're very much ready to just to shift another things in our interface of the browser. I will not disclose, what we plan to release, but happy to stay in touch so you can
I
check
mean,
yourself
but
next
do
week.
you have the sense that like that we're going to be browsing the web with our AI, and that like whether it's the sidebar thing which gives you a summary, or like Google SGE now gives you like links, it says like similar sites and things like that. Do you expect that that's at least on the desktop? Obviously mobile's got screen real estate issues, but do you expect that we're going to be doing that, where it's going to be a collaborative? We're going to have a browsing co-pilot, which will be the AI, which will provide us additional context, or is it just going to be there in the side and wait for us to interact with it?
Um, definitely, I d- definitely the way we see is that uh, it's incorporated in your browsing flow, because whenever the way you even state that it's a sidebar, or it's a service in a sidebar, or it's a service in a tab, it means that it's a kind of jump to it, get
Yeah.
what you need, and jump back experience. And definitely, it's awesome to see that we have users very happy with that. But it doesn't mean that it's enough for us. So when I mentioned that we want smooth experience, we would like to integrate AI a little bit more. It means that we don't want to change your habits. We don't want to change your pattern of browsing. It's like maybe something easy to compare. That was the thinking behind Tab Islands. We don't want to provide a feature that will help you organize tabs, because what we want you to do in a browser is browsing, not organizing tabs, right?
Right.
So that's why AI is so powerful, because of course if you want to have this feeling of to interact with AI, which is cool in itself, you go to sidebar, you go to any service, you interact. But if we are talking about do the really big shift in how we can build interfaces because there is an AI technology, then maybe as a user, you should not see it actually. Of course, with a transparent opt-in option, but you know what I mean? It's like if you're happy to try it out, you should
Yeah.
feel just super cool browsing in our browser, not really thinking that you're using AI in a way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's right. So it did. So do you think we're going to have like a browsing companion? I mean, it's like browsing with us, or do you think they'll remain separate?
Um, I don't really see it like A or B, black or white.
Okay, so both. So, but you believe that this idea of, because historically we've not had a browsing companion. We've had a browser. It's us in the browser, and then if we want to do something else, it's like a separate thing, right? But you do think that in the future we will have the AI or whatever it is, the assistant will be browsing with us, and we'll have that context and ready to help us with our browsing and enhance the experience. You think that's like where we're headed? This doesn't have to be your product strategy. I'm just like trying to think about like the future of browsing.
So, as a product manager, seeing a lot of product managers, directors in the world now, I would say that, probably maybe in 3 or 5 years, everyone will be AI user, right?
Yes.
And and it's not entirely it doesn't mean that everyone will go to a service, log in, or subscribe to something. I probably just AI will be very standard part component of interfaces. So I think if you understand it today, you can actually start building right interfaces today. Um, and it's really also it depends on your product, right? So I believe that for some products AI should be invisible. For some other products, AI should be
Sure.
in the way, maybe. For other products, it really makes sense that it's an assistant or companion or I don't know, like a side service. You know what I mean? It's a we have really different products in the world, but um, let's say like there is always some new technology coming. AI is just amazing. It's big. It's so inspirational. But it will start being like a almost standard component sometime in the future of every interface.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so final question, and we'll wrap up. Should marketers, like people who create websites, be doing anything differently now in order to improve the browsing experience with this new transformation that's going on from an AI standpoint?
Um, that's an amazing question for the final question, honestly, because um, and I'm not sure if it's only about marketers, like so the web was some way constructed some time ago, and we have different phases of the web, like web 1, web 2, web 3, etc. But there is a certain mental model, right, we have about the web. So if you think about the web, you see websites, probably social media, some probably popular, a couple of logos, which are probably, written in your mind already. This is the web, right? Um, so the question is, will we really use AI properly if we stick to this model of the web, or do we really deserve for the new web model, right? And I believe that maybe the question is not about website, but maybe the question is, uh, what if not websites, right?
Uh-huh. Sure.
What different type of objects or content, or what doesn't mean that we will, browse the web? What is the web actually? So this is something that I believe not only us trying to imagine.
Any recommendations for people who build websites to like how to take advantage of this right now, or it's still uncertain?
I would say everything is uncertain, everything is moving. I mean, the world is, in our tech industry, it's moving so fast that if I would say any recommendation, it's just like follow your passion and your users and try to combine your imagination with the demand, because otherwise you will be lost.
Absolutely. And I'll tell marketers right now, what you need to do is go back to more text because the large language models need text. So I know we've moved into the infantilization of content by just doing pretty images everywhere because we drove into social media and mobile. But it is a content world now, and the content of language is once
Yeah.
again super important. And so that's what I recommend to people. Like, there's several things, like, because this is like something I spend a lot of time thinking and talking to people about. But Joanna, check it. This has like been amazing. Thank you so
Um,
much.
Thanks for having me. That was a super conversation for me as well.
Okay, great. All right. So what should people do? You want to do the call to action here? Should they go download the Opera browser, or if they already have the Opera browser, what should they
Of
do?
course, I would love people to download Opera One today and just browse as they always do, especially with ARIA.
And there's even, I saw there's even a new chess.com theme that people can like play chess while they're browsing at work.
Yes, for chess lovers, we definitely have our another version of Opera One.
Perfect. All right, folks. Thank you. I'm Brett Kinsella. This has been the VoiceBot podcast. We've been doing this now since 2017. So a few years in the bag right now. We've had amazing entrepreneurs, amazing innovators, and amazing industry leaders and transformational folks like Joanna. So Joanna, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me.